So, with the release of episode 25, the first season of Spy Family finally comes to a close. And I feel that episode 25 closed this season very, very well, for it did two things. One, it created a milestone achievement that was introduced in the very first episode, namely the requirement for Lloyd to meet Donovan Desmond. But two, it did it in a manner that left more questions rather than answers. And because of that, as much as it did achieve a milestone, it left the viewers wanting more to understand exactly who Donovan Desmond was and how this mission was going to continue forward. And so this episode closes it in a manner that creates closure to this first season while creating a desire for the viewers to immediately want to see season 2. Now, the opportunity for Lloyd to meet Donovan Desmond came from the social gathering that Eden College has once every half term. And during that time, the former Imperial scholars and their parents arrive at the social gathering. And since Damien's brother is an Imperial scholar, Donovan Desmond appears at the gathering. The problem is, since the gathering is so well protected and so close to the public, that even somebody like Lloyd has a difficulty infiltrating the gathering. But luckily, the opportunity comes up because of a situation with regards to Damien. And this is something that I really liked about episode 25. Despite the fact that this was really focused towards Operation Strix, and there was this cat and mouse conversation going on between Lloyd and Donovan, much of the story actually focused on Anya and Damien. And because of that, it was another way of bringing a total closure to season 1 by bringing the story from both perspectives. Now, if you recall, Damien was a boy who was mostly neglected by his father, Donovan, and he has always wanted to earn the ability to get his father's respect. And so when he heard that his father was going to be at the social gathering, he wanted to use this opportunity to meet with his father to have a heart-to-heart conversation. But since Damien is not an Imperial scholar yet, he's not allowed to go to the gathering, which meant that he had to ask his father if he would be willing to meet him outside of the gathering. And of course, that creates the opportunity for Lloyd. And since Anya is trying to save the world by moving Operation Friendship forward, she's constantly spying on Damien, almost to the point of being a stalker. And she finds out that Damien has asked his father to meet with him. And since Anya knows that Damien has always wanted to earn his father's respect, from her perspective, it was not only to save the world, but she probably also had some thoughts with regards to whether he would be able to become closer to his father. So this was a very interesting story in that there was no major action. The comedy was relatively held back, but there was a tremendous amount of intricacy in the human relationships that went on in this particular episode. Because even with Damien's request, we find out two things. First, there seems to be a tremendous amount of distance between his older brother and him. And we don't exactly know why. It may be because his older brother is so proud of being an Imperial scholar that he has no time for the common folks like Damien. Or maybe there is something deeper. We do not know. Why is Damien so much estranged from his father when his older brother seems to not be? And even when Damien asks his older brother to ask his father to meet with him, his older brother is like, yeah, you could ask, but I don't think it'll happen because he's too busy for somebody like you, sort of deal. And so you really start getting a very interesting understanding of just how this family operates. But once again, this does create an opportunity for Lloyd to meet with Donovan. And since Lloyd is spying Damien almost as much as Anya is, he finds out about this meeting as well. And so the actions he has to do for the setup to meet with Donovan starts moving into action. And we find out later how he creates the coincidental meeting with Damien just during the time when Donovan arrives. But what's interesting is there is a lot of character retrospect in this episode because somewhere along the way, because of the somewhat insulting, demeaning comment that his brother made about him, that he was really not worthy of his father's time, Damien almost fell for it and almost canceled the meeting, which would have been terrible for Lloyd. And since Anya knows that she has to save the day, it is Anya who goes out to talk Damien out of canceling the meeting. And since this is Anya, the way she does it is extremely convoluted and nobody exactly knows what she said, including Anya herself. But it was enough for Damien to decide that he will continue on to meet his father. And in fact, as convoluted as Anya's statement was, it was actually quite a good one because she was talking about transparency. If you want to have a good relationship and a good trust with your father, then you have to be transparent with your actions. Not only the good points, but the bad points. And there is no reason why he shouldn't be able to communicate his achievements and his faults to his father. But of course, the major part of this episode comes when Donovan Desmond does finally appear to meet with Damien. And what we find is that Desmond Donovan is a very interesting character. In some ways, he is a poker face, but in other ways, it may just be that his personality is so unusual that even somebody like Lloyd can't really understand what Donovan Desmond is thinking about. And of course, since this is supposed to be a coincidental meeting, Lloyd uses the opportunity to apologize to both Damien and Donovan with regards to Anya punching Damien. And it's at that time that Donovan Desmond says, don't worry about it, kids will be kids, which actually upsets Damien because he was hoping that his father would take his side a little bit more. But when he goes to try to complain about it, yeah, we get some very unusual responses back from Donovan Desmond. So what's interesting is it is Lloyd who actually backs Damien up and starts talking about the feelings that a father would have with regards to the child, the conflict that you have between not understanding what the child is actually thinking of most of the time, but trying to do whatever they can for the child's best interest. And it is at that time that we get the most interesting response back from Donovan Desmond, which is that he agrees with Lloyd in that just because they are your children does not mean you understand them. Just because they are of the same blood does not mean that they are close to you. For all practical purposes, they are just another stranger. And this does two things. One is, of course, it makes Lloyd wonder about exactly what sort of person Donovan Desmond is. Is his cold persona the reason why he is moving forward with potentially trying to create a war? Many questions come up within Lloyd's mind. But of course, from Damien's perspective, that was probably one of the coldest statements he could have received, because he's basically talking about his son being a stranger. Now, what's interesting from my perspective is it is a very cold statement, and it does put Donovan Desmond in a situation where he almost feels heartless. And the first time I read it in the comic, I felt that way. But with regards to the anime, it's not really because it's the anime, it's basically because I saw it twice now. You start wondering, is he that way because that's what his main persona is? Or is he that cold because his environment created that? Did somebody very close to Donovan Desmond betray him? And did he pay a tremendous consequence because of that betrayal? And because of that, is he the recluse that he is due to that situation? And if so, who betrayed him? And what was that betrayal? He is now not the leader of the country. And did something happen politically that made him lose power? And if so, what was the persona of Donovan Desmond prior to that betrayal? Now, this is all speculation. There may not have been any betrayal. This may be a persona of a person who is extremely cold at heart, but you're not exactly sure. The way he said that statement of trust and blood almost makes it sound like he is resenting a situation that happened in the past that makes him now believe that he cannot believe anyone at all. So that does bring up a question with regards to Donovan Desmond. Is he the stereotypical evil guy that has no heart? Or is he somebody who has lost trust and because of that cannot trust anything in life? And since Lloyd is trying to psychoanalyze him, of course this brings up a lot of questions to Lloyd, which of course in turn brings up a lot of questions to the viewer. So this is a perfect way for us to get introduced to a very mysterious character, which probably Tatsuya Endo will slowly reveal layer by layer as this story goes along. I'm still trying to question, is Donovan Desmond the true antagonist of this series? Is he the real person that is the one that's trying to create the war? Or is there somebody else in the shadows and Donovan Desmond is basically the one who is taking the blame for a lot of this situation? I am not sure. Tatsuya Endo works in a very mysterious way, so I cannot say one way or the other. But one thing I do have to say about Tatsuya Endo, he does not write stories on the mainstream. Typically, the story does not go the way you kind of expect it to. And I'm wondering if Donovan Desmond is a character introduction that follows Tatsuya Endo's characteristic of being outside of the mainstream plotline. And so it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But we won't know until we learn more about Donovan Desmond in the future. And because of that, it creates this desire by everybody who watched this episode to wonder what's going to happen next. And because there was a very heartfelt statement in the very end where Donovan Desmond tells Damien to do better, but it is in a manner that makes you, again, wonder, is he feeling like he wants to support Damien and so he's cheering him on? Or is he doing it just to make sure that the Desmond name does not get tarnished? And it'll be interesting to find out how it goes in the future. But it is enough for Damien to be happy. He was acknowledged by his father. And so this episode closes the story in two ways with regards to the spy side, but also with regards to understanding family. We get that in many ways. We see the contrast between somebody who's privileged but lonely, like Damien, versus somebody who had a very questionable past, but is currently in a very loving relationship, like Anya. And that contrast between the two is really well done in this story, and I really enjoyed it in this episode. So I am looking forward to season 2. And once we hear more about it, which I think there are some trailers already for the next season, I'll talk about that. Now there is also the movie coming up, and so I'll probably talk about that in another video as well. But this is the episode 25 discussion of Spy Family. If you watched it, what'd you think about it? Any comments that you leave will be greatly appreciated. And until the next Spy Family video, happy anime watching, and as always, Jaya, nice day everyone.